All right, back with you here on News at Prime. Now, this whole entire week, we've been hearing arguments in the Constitutional Court. The Competition Commission argued there that the international traders accused of colluding to manipulate the South African rand-dollar exchange rate were not merely participants in opaque market, but the Commission believes they were fully conscious architects of the economic damage they caused, with a clear understanding that their actions would deliberately distort the value of the South African currency for their own profit. Right, let's speak now to economist and director of Firstsource Money, Redge Nkosi, on this. Redge, good to have you once again, and thank you very much for your time. Speaking of architects, I mean, I read that in 2017, two gentlemen would have been arrested. Jason Katz and Christopher Cummings were jailed after pleading guilty to participating in this activity of price fixing in the foreign currency. In the court documents, it says here, Christopher Cummings was a dealer of Central and Eastern European, Middle Eastern and African currencies on the FX desk of a New York-based financial institution from approximately 2007 to 2013. Cummings, an FX dealer to competing institution, conspired to suppress and eliminate competition by fixing prices. What did these two gentlemen actually do? Firstly, who are they? What do they do? How do they make their money? And what did they actually do here?
These are gentlemen who work for banks, and they sit in the foreign exchange rooms. Normally, the foreign exchange rooms have got two. The interbank one and another local desk which deals with currencies that pertain to you and me. The interbank one is for banks themselves. So these people in front of them have got screens, Reuters screens sometimes and Bloomberg screens, where they monitor the movements of the currency in particular times. And not just that, they also have money in their votes, which they can use. Either that money would be the bank's money, proprietary money, or individual or their clients' money. So it depends which one they have, or they could as well have both. So they begin by communicating with the other parties in various banks to say, all right, let's see if we can manipulate this currency up to this particular level and make this type of profit. So this is exactly what they did. So this issue started around 2007, indeed, quite correctly, and up to 2013. And then the government in the US picked it up. Remember, there are two currencies that were involved here, the rand and the dollar. For as long as you manipulate the dollar, you are under the jurisdiction of the US government. And they can, therefore, issue summons or do whatever, but charge you for that. So these persons have been doing this business for quite a while, not just South African rands, other currencies as well. But the depth to which they went to the South African rand was rather troubling in the sense that the notes that they had say, let's go for the rand, and they called it ZAR domination. ZAR meaning Z-A-R, meaning South African rand, domination, meaning they simply want to attack the rand in the manner they deemed appropriate so that they can make money for themselves, and at the end of the day, for the banks they're working for.
Yeah, so say they created non-bona fide trades, coordinated the placement of bids and offers on that particular platform, the trading platform that they created, some kind of WhatsApp group, and agreed on currency prices. It's, to a layman, not quite clear what all that means. What actually did they do?
Yeah, what they normally do is they say, all right, the rand to the dollar is, say, 12 rand to $1. They say, well, okay, let's suppress this one, let it be 15 rand to the dollar. So in other words, the rand becomes a useless currency. And in between the buying and the selling rate, they basically spread, they enlarge the amount between the buying and the selling rate, and they profit in between. So they continue to do that for as long as they deem appropriate. And that can be done using lots of money. And in this case, it were quite a few millions of dollars.
Now, what did the banks then do in that particular case? Because these, of course, are the architects of this. They're individuals, they are forex traders, but I suppose they also work for some of the banks. But it seems some of the banks came on board here. According to Advocate Nkosi, at least 13 banks would have colluded.
Today, we have 28 banks that are charged. Indeed, it started with quite a few banks. You can trade foreign exchange using the banks, or even just normal persons who are allowed to do that. They can do for their own purposes, but they normally work very close to each other because they know each other. So it started in New York. That thing can spread right across the world. It's not just in one jurisdiction, but in various jurisdictions. So the rand is traded offshore as well as onshore. So what was happening here was the people who were trading in New York, when the South African rand trading in Johannesburg had closed. So it was easy for them to begin to manipulate the rand that way.
And so far, we know that 2 banks would have admitted their involvement, paying fines in 2017 and 2023, respectively. Those are Citibank and Standard Chartered. What did they reveal, I mean, as part of, I suppose, their admission of guilt?
They simply agreed to the fact that they committed a crime of collusion with a view to depressing the rand. That is, in simple terms, what they agreed. Remember, this issue doesn't come from the government of South Africa. It comes from the US, where they were charged there. And the US was able to monitor these transactions easily and pick up that somebody is actually playing with our currency, of course, against the rand. So they agreed that they were indeed colluding. Hence, they were charged $40 million in the US. At that time, it was about 432,000 rands and so on. But the Competition Commission, which is the DTI here, had to go and engage the American government, get some evidence from there, including those notes where they were saying, let's dominate the ZAR, the rand. So it went on and went on until 2017 here, and continued to 2019 up to today, where now the 28 banks are charged. They are saying in their argument that the authorities in Pretoria do not have jurisdictions over us, meaning that they are foreign banks. Therefore, Pretoria has nothing to do with them. And the Competition Appeals Court agreed with them. It's very, very unusual. I don't understand how they did that, because from an economic perspective, the rand is a public good for South Africa. It is for South Africans. Any person attacking the rand is essentially attacking Pretoria. And you cannot therefore say you don't have jurisdiction for an enemy who attacks Pretoria. The manipulation of this currency could have significant economic implications. Intensified volatility, capital outflows, trade imbalances, and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, you have a currency that no one can believe in because of this volatility caused by these banks. And to say that the South African government has no authority over these crooks, I'm afraid, is something to behold by any person who has some understanding of what a rand means to South Africa and what a dollar means to the US. It's very easy. Any person manipulating the dollar is charged by the US. It's very, very common. You might have heard that we had a minister in Mozambique not long ago who traded in the dollar. He was requested by the US to face charges in the US just on acting on a currency that is of some country out there.
Now, we have our own banks here, I think at least 3 that I see mentioned here, FirstRand Bank, Nedbank, and Standard Bank, saying, well, you do not have evidence against us being involved in these activities. Why does that matter, and how does that impact South Africa?
Well, firstly, these are citizens. A bank is like ABSA, Standard Bank, is a citizen of Pretoria. And to the extent that they were part of it, surely they should be charged. But they're claiming that they were not part of it. You may remember Maria Ramos, former Director General of Treasury and Transnet and so on, accepting that ABSA was involved, and she apologized on behalf of ABSA. And some of these banks actually said, we are going to be, give us lenience, all right? We are going to reveal what we did and who we did with. Now these banks are saying, well, Standard Bank and so on are saying no and no and no. But I think the government, which is the Competition Authority, Competition Commission, has information in regard to these activities. I think they should be able to present. I'm sure they were presenting anyway, as we saw for the past 2-3 days in the Constitutional Court.
Africa Ngcuba Toby says something rather, I suppose, important, and it should worry South Africans going forward in any case, that currency manipulation introduces a permanent structural change to the value of the currency. Even ordinary consumers were affected by this because of the distortion that affects the value of products, and it impacts on South Africa going forward. How important is that kind of argument?
It's absolutely important. In fact, it's at the center of this argument. What they've done, the structural effect, what they mean there is that there comes to be a permanent effect on the currency, it being weakening and so on and so forth. As I mentioned earlier on, you may have capital outflows, investors losing confidence in your economy, and you have trade imbalances arising. You have inflation shooting up as a consequence of the rand being so weak or useless, if you want. What that means is that the common man on the street suffers. You and me as poor persons suffer just because some crooked bank somewhere has pocketed a lot of money for its own purposes. Yeah. So you have such effects on the economy, macroeconomic effects of intentionally interfering in the workings of foreign exchange is massive. That's that argument that the judge was putting forward is very, very central to the whole picture of this case. In fact, that's the very reason we as South Africa, as government, are pursuing these crooks.
Redge,
and remember, they accepted. Remember, they accepted. So the criminals, they did accept that. Yeah. Some of them, and they were charged. Yeah. You know, some leniently, and I think the others were going to be charged as well if the Constitutional Court finds them liable for this.
Indeed. Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Economist and Director at Firstsource Money, Redge Nkosi, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on this evening.